checking things out this morning, seeing if everything's all right. It's it's 1:46 in the morning Pacific Standard Time. It's Thursday. It's the 10th of June, 2021. Seems like some activity outside this early in the morning. People probably going to different places. Lucky them. Yeah. So the great solar eclipse that they've been announcing for God knows how many months, happening in different portions of the world. And part of the United States will be happening on the East Coast this time. The total solar eclipse, or nearly total when we call it that way. And hopefully in layman's terms, is when the moon is coming in between the Earth and the Sun. And it casts a shadow on the Earth. It's a lot different than a lunar eclipse, which is Earth shadows going across the moon, and you can actually see that one. When it comes down for total solar eclipses, you can't see them without getting your eyes blinded by radiation. It's still hard as hell to see the sun right now as it is. A lot of extreme radiation coming out from that ball of energy. But there are more ultraviolet radiations coming out there that, as I understood, it fries out the cones in your eyes, and it doesn't make you colorblind, it just makes you blind, period, eventually. Well, we had an eclipse the last 5 years. Old number 45 actually tried to see the eclipse with his own eyes. Went outside and looked at the sun directly. Everyone else, during the total solar, had solar glasses, specialized glasses that you can actually purchase or find at astronomy clubs, where there's a sheet of film, darkened film, that allows the intense image of the sun to go through the uh, film itself, through the material, where you're actually seeing the sun as it is. And you can actually see the moon. A layman's solar eclipse, well, if the amateur wants to do it the hard way, and it's the easiest way to do it anyway, is you get a stiff cardboard, thin. Take, for example, the back of a notebook. Now, some people say put a pinhole in it, or you can just put a pencil hole in it. But you get a hole in it, you get a sheet of paper, a piece of paper, and then with the hole, it's having the rays of the sun shine through the hole onto the sheet of paper, and you can actually see what's going on. It's the simplest form without you looking at the sun directly. I learned this trick a hell of a long time ago. I love that one. And it's simple, and it's easy, and it's safe for my eyes. Other people like to use video cameras whenever they could, with special filters that they can either download or put on top of the phones or cameras, and just watch it that way. And then they're looking at their computer screens or whatever, and they can see what's going on. Or you can go over to your local observatory or astronomy club, and they've got the equipment necessary. They even got the um, bigger mechanical setup where the projection of the sun is going onto a plate. You can look at the plate directly and see how the eclipse is going. About 10, 15 years ago, I believe, me and my brother saw that one. And we had gotten a couple of eclipse glasses at one time from astronomy club. One of them is just hiding about here somewhere. And through these lenses, I was actually able to see and try to photograph an eclipse somewhere in my digital recording, somewhere in the daydream. I've got the pictures of those eclipses. I wish I had a film of it. It would have been nice to do a video on the damn thing. I was just taking snapshots left and right of it because it was so damn cool. Now, for me, I think it was the boringest damn thing for me to see is the lunar eclipse. Because in order to see a lunar eclipse, it doesn't make the moon totally black as if it was going through its phases. This is not like a phase situation. Like, you have the face of the moon totally, and the earth is right here, the moon is right here, and the sun is right here. And somehow the orbits of the moon and the earth are in a way where the sunlight is being blocked by the earth. And as we're seeing the full face of the moon always shining in our face, it becomes blackened because the earth's shadow is moving across it. It's moving, the earth is moving, and we're seeing the relativity of it. So we're seeing the phases going. And it's safer on that one because we are seeing the reflected light. Usually when we look at the full moon, we're looking at the reflected light of the sun shining on the moon itself. And we can see pretty much a lot of interesting craters and rocks and stuff like that on the moon. We can see details. Well, when the Earth's shadow comes across it, it darkens it up to a point where we have a bit of a reddish tint on the lunar surface. And we're able to see this safely for maybe about a few minutes to an hour. And then afterwards, the fun's over, and then that's it. Starts turning back into its full moon again. But that's all right. At least we're able to see it. We're like, whoa. I mean, especially when even at moonrise when it happens here in the West Coast. So that's pretty cool. But the solar eclipses are the dangerous ones because of the radiation coming directly from the sun. Now, there have been times when we've heard from different astronomers that there's planets going in between Venus or Mercury, going in between the Earth and Sun, and we're able to see that as black dots. Now, visually, we can't see it without getting our eyes fried, but through the techniques of the solar telescope, through the pinhole effect on it, we're actually able to see that. And if we had special glasses, we can also see that too. Now, if we actually had them hooked up to our phones, we can see that even better. But here on the West Coast, when we're talking about the great solar eclipse happening, we're not seeing it here because the angle of the solar eclipse, where it's happening, and also our seasons at this point over here, orbital mechanics, you gotta love it. We're not able to see any of it because the shadow is not going to come across our path over here on the West Coast. Not for I don't know how many decades. I don't know. Maybe several years. I haven't quite got that information, but that would be pretty cool if it did. And as I understand about totality, not just a partial, but an actual totality where a small corridor where the eclipse is happening, everything becomes black for a few minutes. It becomes like night for a couple seconds, and even though it's during the daytime. Then afterwards, it turns into something else. So that's kind of fun about astronomy. I was interested in astronomy a long time ago as a kid. My mother gave me an astronomy book. And at the time, it was what we knew about astronomy back in the early 70s. We actually had 9 planets, not 8 planets. And we didn't have the exoplanets, so we didn't have the Kuiper Belt. And we didn't know what the hell was going on out beyond there, and Pluto was still a mystery. So imagine my surprise. I'm taking the classes left and right, and they barely covered anything concerning about the Kuiper Belt back in the late 70s or early 80s, because we didn't discover it about the Kuiper Belt, not until we get satellites and more visuals going on. And then there was a debate going on in the 1990s through 2000 whether or not if Pluto was still a planet or not. And if it is a planet, is it considered part of the original that we would consider part of the original 9? There was controversy concerning about the Pluto planet. People thought it should have been considered just a regular planet. It should be part of the 9 that we actually originally discovered, and it should not be taken off our lists. Not until they started discovering more and more details about the Kuiper Belt, which is a lot more astronomical objects out there beyond our normal planetary range. The more I have taken, the more I've tried to understand about astronomy later on in life, it's like, my God. We had launched satellites out there. Excuse me. Ugh. I hate it when I get midnight creepies. It scared the hell out of me. Well, I just saw this black shadow coming over here. And no, this wasn't anything else. This was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. What the hell do I got to do to get rid of these bastards? Anyway. I just hope I haven't got the damn thing on my damn leg. Otherwise, I'm going to have an issue. Anyway. I was saying something about the Kuiper belts and stuff like that. Our satellite systems. I'm kind of surprised at our satellites that we keep sending out there to space, that they hadn't been crushed yet. And there was a lot more to the asteroid belt than I've discovered. Some of the asteroids, even the astronomers these days, are having a field day with the knowledge of what astronomy is these days. It's more of an evolution in our understanding of the universe than anything else these days. So, I'm living in a time where Galileo and Copernicus and Lowell and Griffith, these guys that we had named observatories and telescopes and stuff after these, Galileo particularly. I believe there were satellites that we launched out into space to look at the universe. If these guys could only see the universe when they were alive, what we're seeing right now, my God, they'd be freaked out left and right. But Galileo was using his telescope to see the universe. I'm surprised he didn't get cataracts. I'm surprised he didn't get blinded by the sunlight. But if he saw what we saw these days, his love and pursuit of science is what drives a lot of these scientists further and further into the field. It's reasons why we actually launched the Hubble in the first place, and we got one or two more satellites out there acting as in place of this Hubble Space Telescope to see the wonders that we have. Science should not be discounted. Science should not be politicized. Science is trying to understand the nature of our universe as we understand it, the physicality of it, and the nature of it. We can argue about the semantics of it. We can argue about whether or not if it was created by God or not. Well, if it is, it is. But for the universe itself, it has its own mechanics, it has its own laws of physics out there, its own way of operating. And when we start understanding more and more about that, it's not understanding how God did things. We're understanding more and more about ourselves these days. We can also get machines to look beyond the atom itself into particles into a quantum universe that we've never seen. We've envisioned it. The Marvel Universe films, when they're talking about Ant-Man going into the subatomic there and then comes right back out again. I know probably a few people are like, yeah, let's go down there. I'm like, no, thank you. I'll just deal with the universe as it is right now. Because I'm seeing the universe right now as it is. We got rich people want to go out on rocket rides and spend their billions on these damn 11 to 12 minute hot shots up in space and then come right back down and then have bragging rights to spend billions for bragging rights. Millions actually, but still. Lucky them, the bastards. Regular common people, doesn't matter. We can make science fiction films concerning about space colonies out there and how space colonies would be well above the regular Earth people or social statuses. We've got science fiction films and series out there to explain how our current status might be projected into the future. Shows like The Expanse, if you're actually watching on Amazon Prime. No, this is not an advertising plug. I'm just saying as is. That they show the social classes. What this one writer, oh God, he's a genius when it comes to Africa. He's really going for the social. When he's talking about how life, as he sees it, in our current state, being projected into the future. If we actually had the ships right now to go out in space and have the colonies, we're seeing the social classes right now being projected into the future. Gene Roddenberry, one I know of, back in the 60s, wanted a little bit more of a better, closer to utopian if necessary, but not quite there. Because he still had to deal with social issues of other planets that are explored briefly, but still the things we're dealing with even back then. You talk about science, you talk about science fiction, then I know some people talk about religion, belief systems. I know there are times there had been clashes between the scientists and the theologians, the evangelicals out there. Some of them still don't believe about science or about the creation or how the universe was created and why we should be going out there. That's a question for every person who wants to challenge the unknown in his own way or her own way. But in a way, we have to challenge what's in front of us. We have to define it because that is the nature of our thinking, of our being, of our trying to put our place in the universe. We just can't quote unquote be. We can see the majesty of the planets out there revolving around the sun. For a long time in the Dark Ages, we were taught that the Earth was the center of the universe. Everything danced around the Earth. Until we discovered that there was planets out there, and there was more to space than we previously thought. challenged a lot of our views. And with mathematics, we were able to deduce planetary orbits and times and schedules. There were times when we had the visitors from outer space, the comets, the meteorites, streaking across to freak the living crap out of people. Halley's Comet was one of those earliest recorded and drawn upon. Comes every 79 approximately years. I may or may not see it in my lifetime again. But there have been other comets I've seen in my lifetime already. That's pretty interesting. Dirty ice balls that contain amino acids and everything else being cooked alive as it's going to the sun and around the sun and shot back into space again. We had satellites trying to chase down down the comets to get particles and gases and physicalities of the comets just to see what the hell they are, get an image of it, maybe get a sample of it, return it back home. In our own imaginings and our own creative endeavors, we also imagined what terrors lie out there. Besides the biological monsters that we're facing these days, but we mutated them, changed them into something else, and they're becoming part of our lexicon. Or the smallest microbes that can infect us and try to kill us and didn't even realize it. They're trying to fight for survival like everybody else. And we have yet to come across alien microbes like that. We've come across minerals. We've come across grains of sand, of particles that our own planet is being made out of. We just didn't pop up out of here. According to what we believe in science, everything's being recycled out in the universe. When you get a universe created and then after a while it gets destroyed, but the particles of it scatter about in the universe, and then other planets form from those particles, and it's like a constant recycling of the universe, so to speak. It's like our own water system, theoretically, on our planet. Nothing is considered pure. There's no such thing as purity. We don't know what purity is because we never seen it what looked like, what an actual pure water molecule would be, except we understand that hydrogen and oxygen combined. Let's see, what was it? H2O. Two hydrogen atoms to one oxygen atom, and then we get a water molecule. But the original, we're dealing with copy after a copy after a copy being recycled and repercolated all the damn time. So we know what recycled is. We don't know what pure water is. Or pure oxygen. Oxygen molecules being scattered about throughout the universe. Created, destroyed, created again. Different formats, different gases. Our own biological makeup that we have here. Breathe in certain gases and breathe out carbon dioxide, monoxide that we make machines, and they spew that shit out. How to give us a greenhouse effect to kill us all. The constant analysis of what things may or may not be, of trying to understand things. Our thirst for knowledge is insatiable. Our need to expand is imperative. I did say expanding. When you're stuck on a planet for, I don't know, how many, about 10 billion people? More? How long does a planet going to sustain and survive if we're sucking everything else out of it and it doesn't get a chance to replenish or recycle it before we can get some kind of viability? This is the reasons why we have to think about exploration. This is why we have to think about finding other places to live on, even if it's going to be artificial. We have to learn how to live out there and survive. And people still have a problem with that concept. We have writers dreaming up scenarios like this on a constant basis. We see it, we read it in our books, we see it in the videos, we hear people talking about it. We've had shows that actually scared the shit out of us about if we don't take care of ourselves, what happens after that. And I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. There was a movie called, it was based off of an old television show, Lost in Space. Between 2000 and 2005. The concept of the film was based off of a 1960s TV series made by Irwin Allen a long time ago about a family being sent out into space to Alpha Centauri to land and colonize, maybe, or start a colonization, but then they get lost and have navigational problems. The doctor with his evil plans, his selfish plans. He's on this mission. He didn't want to be on the mission, but now he's stuck with his family. Now he's got to, first season's like trying to get back home to Earth himself, so he has luxury again. And then it's second and third season, he's just a comical twit. Almost a comical twit in the movie. I couldn't stand the plot line of the damn thing. But the concept of the movie itself was supposed to be the Earth was coming about 50 years before its demise. The scientist in the movie had predicted that the Earth was coming to an end. And we need to get the planet's population off. So the ship they had for the Jupiter 2 was supposed to be this group of scientists family popping into space, getting a space gate built, and then the population could pop themselves in transports. And of course, I never did see the damn series. I wish I had. See whether or not the damn thing would work or not. But it would have been something to see the series. I'd seen the movie. That's where I was basing my suppositions from. But in saying all this, saying what humanity has to do to survive, one way or another, this is what drives my curiosity at times. Besides the political nature that we have right now as it is, we have the geopolitical, but we also have the geophysical that we still have to consider. And then that also runs into, as I said before, into our belief system at this point over here. Whether or not the earth can take care of itself, or whether or not we're going to have Almighty God restore everything to its balance because of our belief systems. I don't know. I hope maybe. But if he does, it's on his time schedule, not ours. Nor on the planet's time schedule, but he probably would be aware of it in the first place, I would imagine. For right now, we're still dealing with what we have right now. And this conversation based because I'm looking at, I'm still waiting for the solar eclipse to happen. And it probably is happening because certain people on social media are keeping track of this thing. And they want to know whether or not we're actually going to have solar eclipses. And if we do, currently on social media right now, in certain coastlines, they're actually able to see this right now, even as we talk. Right now, the time is 2:15 in the morning Pacific Standard Time. On East Coast time, it's 5:15. It's a little bit older than that in Europe. And right along the Canadian eastern coastline. But we're seeing, and the music that you're hearing is from one particular YouTube channel, by the way. So we're seeing the lunar shadow crossing into the sun's influence. I'll turn this damn thing off. The music. But this is what's happening. This is the great eclipse that the people have been talking about. They call it the annular, because it's not a totality. An annular is only when they're leaving about just maybe a little bit of an edge of the sun. The black shadow of the moon goes across the sun's surface, and we only get the image of the sun, but with a black spot of the moon right there. So it becomes a ring. It becomes a ring of light with a black spot in the middle of it. It's fascinating seeing stuff like this. For other people, it's boring as hell. But for those who are raised up in dealing with science fiction, but also dealing with science all the damn time, you just got to admire Mother Nature. You got to admire God's handiwork one way or another. Anyway.